over the next 5-10 years in our industry, we're going to see some crazy, crazy disruption. One of the biggest things that I think is here and starting to be rolled out right now is general purpose robotics in the logistics industry. If you think about it up until this point, yes, we've had robotics, we've had automation, but a lot of that is still very rigid in structure. Like you think about automated unloader or a robotic solution that is doing picking or sorting or something like that. You still have this large implementation that costs a ton of money up front. You're not going to want to take up that much space in your warehouse just for it to be unused, or whenever you just could run a cost benefit analysis on having people doing the actual work and remain flexible, and they're going to be able to beat your ROI and beat your spread on that. Now, where general purpose robotics starts to come in is really opening the robotics market to the boutique and to the mid-market level 3PLs, where general purpose can be thought as a humanoid robot that gets trained by essentially watching or being trained off of the actions of the people at your actual warehouse. And then using AI with those robots, they can start to pick up tasks and get better and learn and be more agile.
Welcome to another episode of Procurement Pulse. Today with Joe Spisak, the founder of Fulfill.com. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. Thanks for joining. You started Fulfill.com, and I thought it was a really interesting business model and idea. And thank you for being on the show, and looking forward to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. I'm excited to talk shop and get into it.
So tell us a little bit more about Fulfill.com. What does it do, and why did you decide to start it?
Yeah, so really Fulfill.com, the core function of our business is we help connect brands with the right warehousing and fulfillment partners. I started this company a little bit over probably 4.5, 5 years ago. And the way I got into it was I've been in e-commerce for probably 12, 13 years. Right after I graduated college, I started a gaming company, a board gaming company, had moderate success with that, and then ended up kind of taking the lessons I learned from bringing this product to market, spinning up a Shopify, going omni-channel fulfillment, getting into retail. And I started another board gaming company and ended up, actually doing pretty well with that, and started to, ship tens of thousands of orders per month during peak season, which is when board games typically do most of their volume, is right around the holiday season. And I went through 3 different 3PLs over the course of a year and a half, really just nightmare scenarios, almost bankrupted my board gaming companies because, if we're doing 80% of our volume during peak season and our 3PL is just crushing us and not getting orders out on time and not giving us best pricing and taking a ton of time to receive, et cetera, it really, really, really hurt us and almost put the gaming companies under. So what I decided to do was bring everything in-house, and I ended up starting to ship out of my mom's garage. And I ended up talking to a couple other board gaming companies in the space, and I found out they were having similar problems as myself. So I essentially said to them, hey, do you guys want me to start shipping for you guys? We'll come up with a fair rate and I'll kind of figure this thing out, but we're already doing it for my own brand. So, it makes sense that I can just do it for you guys as well. And ended up, starting a new LLC, a new company there. And that was the start of the 3PL that I started called Ship Daddy. Fast forward, ended up selling one of those brands, ended up going from mom's garage to purchasing a 140,000 square foot building in central Pennsylvania, filled that warehouse up, and then sold that company and started Fulfill.com. So long story short, you can kind of see how I took the e-commerce knowledge, took the warehousing and fulfillment knowledge, and now we sit in the middle and we play matchmaker.
Yeah, and we've definitely worked with quite a few companies that have struggled to find the right 3PLs and that have struggled to scale because of that. So I definitely see where you're coming from. So what do you do today? How do you qualify those 3PLs? How do you decide the good ones from the bad ones, and who matches what business model?
Yeah, that's a really great question. My answer a couple years ago, my answer even a year ago would have been quite different than what it is now, just with how fast technology and AI is evolving, as well as how fast e-commerce is evolving. like just with the emergence of things like TikTok Shop and just omni-channel fulfillment in general, having the accessibility to so many different marketplaces, everything's moving really fast. So our process has really morphed over the course of the last couple of years, where when we first started, it was a lot more manual and we had a lot smaller network. But now, essentially how the process works is a brand will come to our website. They will log into their own brand side portal and they will fill out the information that we need to successfully give to our matchmaking team to be able to run them through the actual matchmaking process. And we do a hybrid model where we always think that there's going to be some level of actual human helping to do the matchmaking, because there's just so many variables that go into finding the right fulfillment partner. So we ingest that data, all the brand's information, their scope comes to our matchmaking team. And what we do is we have our matchmaking team use a combination of AI and then their own research and knowledge of the 3PLs on our network. And we start to narrow it down from the 2,800 plus 3PLs we have all across the world down to a short list of our top 2 to 5 best options for that particular brand. And, there's so much that goes into that criteria. We have over 100 plus data points on each one of the 3PLs on our network. And, each brand is looking for something different, right? Like what's most important to brands typically is pricing and how much it's actually going to cost from a pick and pack perspective, a storage perspective, a carrier rate perspective. Geography plays in heavily to that, mainly because of where they're potentially shipping into from a port perspective. If they're manufacturing order overseas and they're shipping into Los Angeles or Houston or somewhere on the East Coast, that, you have to start to factor in the cost of what's going to cost to actually freight that from the port to the actual 3PL and factor that into the full equation. And then there's other factors that you need to consider, like value-added services. Like, do these brands need staging and kitting? Do they need special returns processes? Do they have lots of SKUs? The list kind of goes on and on.
Right. Do you have like an internal ranking system where the clients that come to you and say, hey, we need a 3PL, can then kind of like give a rating of the companies? Is that something you have on the back end where you see, okay, we've had bad experience with those companies here, we've had bad ratings from our clients, but we have really good ones over here. Let's focus on those good ones?
Yeah, that's exactly what we have. We essentially give our matchmaking team, when they're running the analysis, scorecard from 0 to 100, 100 being the best possible fit, 0 being no way, these guys aren't a fit at all. It starts to narrow down and narrow down and narrow down, and they may end up with, a list of 10, 15, 20 3PLs that are all within a really good, reasonable range. And then it's their job to actually jump in and take a look and really hyper analyze, okay, who are our top 3, top 4, top 5 of this, and why are they our top picks? And then get them in front of the brand, let them talk, and help kind of handhold the brand all the way into the 3PL that they end up choosing.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really smart idea you had there, because right, besides a lot of times I know the companies we work with, they know a handful of 3PLs, but they don't know, right, the 2,200 that are out there. So they're typically stuck on choosing between those handful of 3PLs that they know, and none of them might be the right fit to start with, right? So I think, and then tell me a little bit more about that the cost for clients to work with you.
Yeah, so for brands to work with us, we offer our matchmaking service for free. So any brand can come and work with us, run through our matchmaking process, whether they go with one of our 3PLs or not. A lot of brands will come and just go through the process to even see where they kind of stack up with their existing 3PL. So it's kind of a win-win for brands, because even if they don't end up choosing a new 3PL, at least they have the negotiating power to be able to go back to their existing 3PL and say, hey guys, you are doing a great job, or there's a couple of things that are not going great right now that we would like to fix, but we're getting at comparable 3PLs a 25% lower pick and pack rate, and the carrier rates are much better there as well. Like, can you work with us and end up giving us some better rates for us to re-sign with you guys, so we don't have to go through the ridiculous process of moving all of our inventory out and moving to a new 3PL and having that downtime, which if anybody who's ever changed 3PLs, like, that's the last thing you want to have to do. Like I told you, I went through 3 different 3PLs over the course of a year and a half. And it's like, I don't want to be doing this. I want to have someone else do the shipping so I can focus in on marketing, growing my business, getting new SKUs live on the store, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So there really is, right? No risk, no downside for a company to come to you, do the analysis. There's no commitment and just take it from there. I think that's a really neat approach. And I think, so how are you guys growing? When you started about 4.5, 5 years ago, what is business like?
Yeah, business is going really, really well. And we've started to kind of take this core function of our business and start to kind of productize and flywheel into other areas of the logistics space. So I told you, obviously the core function of our business is matching brands with 3PLs, but kind of a byproduct of having a lot of success in that area has been, building trust with the 2,800 plus 3PLs on our network, where, we're talking to these guys on a daily, weekly basis and have a very intimate relationship with them. So you start to see things coming up like, hey, do you guys have, technology recommendations for us? Like our warehouse management system provider isn't working out great right now. Do you guys have any other WMS recommendations? Or, hey, like, do you guys have a preferred packaging vendor or labor management solution or a last mile carrier solution that could help us get better carrier rates to offer to our brands? So just like we connect bucket 1 and 2, brands and 3PLs, now we're starting to connect buckets 2 and 3, 3PLs and technology and service providers. So that's been a pretty fast growing area of our business that we're really excited about, because it's a win-win-win scenario as well, because the better people we can connect our 3PLs with, the more value we can bring there. That trickles down to the brands. Everybody's happy. And, we're just kind of taking our existing business model and extrapolating it out to another bucket to bring value to all parties. And then the last thing that
from the 3PLs, have there been any 3PLs who said, we don't want to work with you? And then kind of what were the reasons?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We've had 3PLs that have churned from working with us in the past. And to come back to your question on, how do we make our money? Well, we make our money on the 3PL side of the house, right? If we offer this as a free matchmaking solution to the brands, we charge our 3PLs a monthly fee to be eligible to receive opportunities on our platform. In addition to just being able to receive opportunities from us, we pack in some additional value there as well in terms of co-marketing, in terms of connecting them with additional partners that we have negotiated discounts with, SEO, organic traffic on our directory, where we get quite a bit of paid traffic coming to our website a month. But then we make money from actually successful introductions of the brands to 3PL partners. So that's not for everybody. We've had 3PLs churn from our platform for lots of different reasons, but I will say we have retained a majority of the 3PLs that we work with, because this is turning out to be such a positive ROI in comparison to the alternative marketing solutions that 3PLs have used in the past. And I'll give you a perfect example. Whenever I was running my 3PL, one of the main ways that we filled up our warehouse was by running a large Google ad spend every month. And, I probably scaled that out to $50,000, $60,000 Google ad spend every month. And I was getting $37 cost per lead. That is unheard of in our market today. Like, you're lucky to get $200 cost per lead, and maybe, maybe 50% of those opportunities are actually valid and not junk and are truly qualified opportunities. So if you run the math on that, and then factor in the time it takes and the time that your sales team's wasting by getting on calls with these folks that aren't truly qualified leads, and then you factor in what you'd be paying a solution like us, it's just a much better ROI, not only from what you're actually paying from a lead perspective, but the time you're saving getting matched with your true ICP as well.
Are there any big players in the market who are so big, who feel like they don't need you guys, and they're kind of like, are you disrupting the market there at all, right? Because I'm not sure. Is there like a Siva Logistics out there who's saying, hey, we don't want to play that game, and ideally we will want you to go away?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And for sure, I'd say where we really shine, and we work with, lots of the big dog e-commerce fulfillment 3PLs out there, but where we really shine is with mid-market 3PLs and with boutique level 3PLs, because those are the people that are traditionally not able to have a, you know,
Right.
$50,000, $100,000, $1 million ad spend per month. And they can offer what I like to call flexible fulfillment, right? Where they can take on a lot of these one-offs. They can handle smaller customers. They don't have such rigid structure in, hey, we need to have a 5 SKU brand that doesn't do retail fulfillment, that does 10,000 orders per month minimum.
Yep.
And, the list kind of goes on and on. So they can be more flexible. And, we work with brands of all different shapes and sizes, but it's really great for us to be able to bring over, a wide variety of opportunities to certain 3PLs and know that they're going to do a great job with them. Yeah. So, with the bigger 3PLs, that's where we get pushback sometimes. And the last thing that I'll say to that is the bigger the 3PLs get, the tighter the margins start to get. It's really hard to have a bigger 3PL operation with multiple 3PLs all across the globe and keep your costs super tight. Like your margins just get more and more thin from an industrial real estate perspective, from a labor management perspective, just from managing that whole operation. They have to have more thin margins. So it makes it more difficult to work with folks like us. And they have marketing budgets and marketing tactics that they've been doing for decades. So it's tougher for them to change over sometimes, I think.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, what are you seeing AI is having an impact on, especially on the fulfillment side, right? Where do you see AI and robotics making the most impact? I think we all hear about Amazon looking to maybe have 0 people in their warehouses in the next couple of years. How is that going? How is that shaping in those mid-sized boutique kind of 3PLs? Where are they today, and what is technology doing there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And man, I think over the next 5-10 years in our industry, we're going to see some crazy, crazy disruption that people have kind of theorized about for, the last couple of years. But now everything is really starting to come to life here, and we're going to see these changes in real time. And one of the biggest things that I think is here and starting to be rolled out right now is general purpose robotics in the logistics industry. And if you think about it, up until this point, yes, we've had robotics, we've had automation, and things have gotten increasingly better, year over year. But a lot of that is still very rigid in structure. Like you think about like an automated unloader, or you think about a robotic solution that is doing picking or sorting or something like that. You still have to have this large implementation that costs a ton of money up front. You have to have a mapping out
Baskets
process.
have to be in the right place. The codes have to be in the right place. Everything has to be kind of uniform. If you have any variation in it, it doesn't work.
Exactly. So it makes sense for some customers that are doing some serious volume on a daily basis. But if you have, a lot of variability with your customers, which most 3PLs do, you're not going to want to take up that much space in your warehouse just for it to be unused, or whenever you just could run a cost benefit analysis on having people doing the actual work and remain flexible, and they're going to be able to beat your ROI and beat your spread on that. Now, where general purpose robotics starts to come in is really opening the robotics market to the boutique and to the mid-market level 3PLs, where general purpose can be thought as, a humanoid robot that gets trained by essentially watching or being trained off of the actions of the people at your actual warehouse. And then using AI with those robots, they can start to pick up tasks and get better and learn and be more agile in where they're placed in the actual warehousing equation. So we're going to start to see that rolled out more and more. And it's not going to happen overnight, because there's still some advancements that need to happen. But within the next 5 years, I think we could see some serious disruption, because people are trying to, reduce the labor force in the warehouses. And if you could bring that in, it's going to be a major changing factor in our industry. And it's like we're right on the precipice of it right now.
Yeah, for sure. How do you think that affects? Obviously, blue collar will be an immediate effect, but do you still see? Well, so who's still going to be in a warehouse? You're going to have engineers in a warehouse? Are you going to have just like is a warehouse going to get designed and then nobody's in it anymore? Or where do you see that's going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we're just going to see, as this starts to become more widely adopted, I think we're going to see a decrease in the requirement of entry level labor at 3PL locations. And again,
So
3PL is such a
you think you're gonna have still a type of warehouse manager now working with an engineer, and they're saying, okay, how do we tweak the robots to be more efficient, right? Maybe they have a routine in there, and then they need to discuss, okay, instead of them going through in a certain order of pick packing, we have them, right? Maybe there's room for optimizing. So you think we're gonna start optimizing the robots?
Yeah, how I could see it going. And, we would have to talk to some robotics experts on this because this isn't exactly my,
Right.
you know, super high area of expertise, but I do see a lot of this on a daily basis. And what I could envision happening would essentially be like a manager managing a cluster of robots in a certain sector. So whenever I was running my e-commerce fulfillment center, we would sort the warehouse by different criteria. Like typically what we
Right.
did was based off of size. So we had sections on anything under 5 pounds that were the apparel vertical. And we would cluster that in a similar spot of the warehouse because it makes sense from receiving
Right.
perspective, from a bin placement perspective, et cetera, et cetera. So what I could see happening is we would have a manager that would oversee 10 people that would handle, 30, 40, 50 customers in that sector and would kind of, delegate certain tasks, say, hey, we need you to help here, start to basically delegate our workforce in those different sectors. Well, I could start seeing a person in a role like that was a bit more specialized, handling a small cluster of robots to handle an increasing amount of complexity as things got trained up from there. But then it starts to get into different sizes. Like not all robots can handle, all the same things. Like if you're shipping big and bulky, if you're shipping hazmat, if you're shipping apparel, all of these things have drastically different requirements. So, we still have a long way to go to be able to fully automate everything.
Yeah, I think so too. And it feels like I've had this discussion before, right? But we've been told the self-driving car is a year away for 15 years now, and they're still not here. They're getting better, right? But it feels like if you had a city full of self-driving cars, one light that kind of when lost electricity or something could block an entire city because all of a sudden you have a problem they can't solve, and then everything piles on top of each other and gets stuck. So yeah, I do think, yeah, it's always, I think there's always the people, right, that expect things to change overnight, and in reality most of the time it's more of a slow steady progress, right? And adopting takes time, and like you said, there's so many different scenarios where things might or might not make sense. I tend to think that especially on the AI side as well, I'm not sure how many white collar jobs will actually be eliminated. I'm sure there will be some, right? There's some things that AI, I think if you have very strict rules, you work in accounting, I think is one, even law and law firms, right? And to some degree finance and entry level jobs like data entry jobs, a lot of them will be affected by AI, but I think it will also give a lot more opportunity to companies to explore growth and to explore other areas they just didn't have the capacity to explore before and to grow more aggressively. So I think there's going to be, right, two types of companies that going to handle AI different. I think one is going to try to replace as much labor with AI as possible and kind of just keep the status quo, and the other side is going to utilize AI to expand and grow more aggressively.
Yes, well said. Well said.
So I tend to think that the AI that could replace us all, I think is going to be so energy and data heavy that it's not going to be feasible to deploy at scale. I think there's going to be pockets, right? Maybe research, medical, where you have these super advanced AIs that are very expensive to deploy the web, but still make sense. And I think for the rest of us, my hope at least is that it will be more of a boost and a companion, right? Almost like you have your personal assistant there, right? That you can bounce ideas off. They can help you be more efficient, but they're not replacing you entirely because there's still aspects of your jobs that making mistakes is just not acceptable. And those AIs, right? And while they get better and better, they also like to hallucinate and invent things and kind of lose track of where they are. I feel like the longer, especially the prompts get, and the longer you are in a certain project with AI, it tends to forget what it did at the beginning. And you're like, no, remember, we said at the beginning we were doing this, and AI has kind of gotten on its own track and it's kind of trying to do something different. So reining it back in and keeping it on track, I feel like has been, at least in my life for the last 2 or 3 years, a constant.
Yes, 100%. And you have to think of AI, kind of day-to-day AI and what we're using from a computer-based perspective and how that could be implemented into 3PL, logistics, e-commerce, like inventory management, being able to audit carrier rates and shipping times and shipping speeds and kind of look at data in mass and be able to extract insight from that, are some like commonly used use cases right now. But then to bring that actual layer down to the hardware perspective and have physical humanoid robotics that are self-learning, there's just so much that can go wrong. And back to your point of what about all of the one-offs whenever it comes to actual e-commerce fulfillment? There's just stuff that you can't plan for and actually bake into that on a day-to-day basis, where there's always going to have to be a pretty hands-on human component, at least for the very near, at least for the future for us, until things can really start to expand out. But that's why, robotics up until this point has been for very specific customers. And there's still a human component involved.
Absolutely. Last question, and I think, right, kind of just trying to pick your brain, and I know you're growing. What do you think, what for people who are in college right now, people who are looking to start their career, wanting to be in supply chain, what would you tell them? What would you give them as advice on what they need to know, what they need to focus on, and how can they have success going into the market?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think, one, it depends on the area of supply chain that you're looking to get into. Is it freight? Is it e-commerce fulfillment? Is it import, export, et cetera, et cetera? Because I think all of those require different training and different skill sets that could make you valuable in those areas, as well as a different path to kind of pursue and get into the industry in those areas and look for growth opportunities. The path that I took was start my own Shopify brand, right? And I think the best way to learn if you want to get in from an e-commerce perspective is try and start something yourself. And, I think that looks so good from a resume perspective. I don't care what GPA someone got in college whenever I'm looking to hire them. I don't care where they graduated from. I want to know what have you built before? Like, what have you failed, 100 times trying to do? What did you learn from that? Yeah. What have you built? And through doing that and creating my own brand, I was able to get into fulfillment, start fulfilling for myself, realize that needed to outsource it. You learn through all of that. So that's a great route to get in from an e-commerce fulfillment standpoint. But a more broad answer, if you're just looking to get into kind of like general logistics, I would start playing around with Claude Code. I mean, I would spin up a GitHub repo. I would get Claude Code installed. I would try and build something and use that as a point on your resume, as opposed to I took, marketing 101 and this class and this class. Like, what have you built? I think that's going to be a differentiator for college kids coming out into a really tough market right now to get a job. That's how you can differentiate yourself in a job market that isn't looking super great for college graduates right now. It's tough.
Yeah, I do think entry-level roles will have to evolve, right? Because otherwise the temptation is there to just automate those, have AI replace those entry-level roles because they're just primed to be taken on by AI. But then I think 5-10 years down the road, you're going to have a problem, right? Because you won't have anybody who's grown up through the ranks. You don't have anybody who understands the business. You don't have that next level of leadership in your organization. So while it is tempting, I think, to eliminate those, I think the companies that are going to succeed in the long run, they will evolve the entry-level roles to be utilizing AI heavily and find other ways to provide value to the company other than your typical, right, data entry. You're going to place POs, follow up on invoices, you're gonna follow up with your vendors. Hey, where's my product, right? I think entry level roles need to evolve into more value add roles, and that way you still have that next level of leaders coming through your organization who understands your organization and who can make the right decision when time comes.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, if you're trying to get into the industry, like you want to know it from the ground up. Like I've picked and packed hundreds of thousands of boxes in my warehouse over the course of, owning that for 5 years. Like I was there for 12 hours a day for 5 straight years, picking and packing boxes and wearing lots of different hats. But really, let me understand the industry from all sides, from all different perspectives. You're right. Like a lot of people coming in now, and I see it a lot in engineers, is they try to build software for an industry that they don't fully understand. Where they can jump in and they can build something, but maybe they're not building the right thing and they don't fully understand what it actually takes to own and operate a warehouse. You're absolutely
It's going
right,
to be a
man.
little bit of a catch-22, right? Because the companies that have automated everything, they're going to struggle to find people who understand their business.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point to end it on. I appreciate you joining us today. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so feel free to reach out to us at fulfill.com. Just come to the contact form and feel free to reach out. If you have any questions about growing an e-commerce brand or finding the right 3PL, or if you are a partner looking to connect with 3PLs, I'm definitely a great resource to chat with and happy to talk shop at any time. So Joe at fulfill.com is my email. Feel free to reach out on there, or Joe Spisak on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.